because then if not, we'll be talking to ourselves.
That's fine. It gets recorded, right? It could always just stay on your page. Yeah.
Why isn't it letting me send this to you?
We are live, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi. We're just waiting for a few folks to come in.
Yes. Get some participation and conversation going on today. Good afternoon, Tanya. Welcome. How are you today? Yes, you can definitely post any questions in advance that you may have or throughout the conversation. We will be having a question answer dialogue, and you can feel free to ask any questions in the comments. And we will definitely be having conversation with you all after we do a quick little Q&A with Miss Wash Carino from Manhattan Legal Services. We're going to give us 2 minutes and then we'll get started, because for those that are a little late, it is going to be recorded. So you will definitely have time to see this on your free time and also reach out with any questions you may have, and we can prepare and answer them. So make sure you put your emails on the thing so we can reach out and connect with you in the future and invite you to other RISE events that we may be having. We have a lot of community parent conversations that we do. So we look forward to connecting with you all.
We do look forward to connecting with you all.
You ready?
Yep.
Yes, kick us off, Kenya.
Good afternoon. My name is Kenya Franklin, Assistant Editor at RISE. This year, RISE has published a series of stories and interviews on parent legal rights and related legislation, core fighting for our rights. Today, we are here on Facebook Live with Manhattan Legal Services to learn about the SCR, how to connect with legal support, record records, advocacy to seal and amend your records, and participate. Excuse me, and prepare for hearings and talk about what will change in 2022. Jeanette and Karina, can you please introduce yourselves?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Jeanette Vega. I am the Assistant Director for Training and Policy, and it is my pleasure to be with you all today. Wash Karina.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. My name is Huascarina Martinez Alonso. I'm an attorney at Manhattan Legal Services.
We will start with some questions. What is the SCR?
So the SCR is essentially a database that houses reports of abuse and neglect or maltreatment in New York State. The reports are maintained by the state.
I would add in, I think when the parents in New York City hear the State Central Registry, what it is for us is a feeling of parole. A lot of parents feel like they did what they needed to do in the child welfare system, and that the surveillance of our families for 28 years is harmful to our communities.
If your name is on the SCR, how does it affect your your chance of getting a job?
As Jeanette just mentioned, the SCR it can be a person's records can be on the SCR for 20 years or until the youngest child on the report is 28 years old. A lot of employers do checks on the state central register to see if you can work with children or other vulnerable people. In 2018, there were over 300,000 of those checks. And so how it affects your employment prospects is if you're on this record, or if you have a record on the SCR, will an employer still consider you for an employment? So, and like I said, that record is there until the youngest child is 28 years old. So it affects and basically folks' abilities to get and retain work.
Yeah, I would just add in that a lot of parents say that it affects us personally because a lot of parents love working with children, and you can't work directly with children any longer when your name is on the state central registry. And to be clear, that this really mainly affects low income families who are brown and black living in low income communities, because we are the families who are being surveillanced by child welfare. So the same communities stay in low income with less opportunity for employment when our names stay on that record.
Yeah, as Jeanette just pointed out, the problem is really cyclical. Like you're in poverty or you're low income, so you get on this registry. Most of the reports on the state central registry have to do with neglect or maltreatment, which really isn't what we think about when we think about when people say, "I'm going to call ACS on you." Oftentimes, people say that in the context of abuse, but most of the reports are really with regard to neglect or maltreatment based on our analysis, and so you can't get a job because you're on the state central registry, and you got on the state central registry because of your inability, or because of poverty related reasons. So it almost perpetuates this cycle. So yeah, that's one of the ways that it affects, and that's one of the ways that the system kind of maintains its grip on communities that are poor or low income.
Are there other ways the SCR affects families' lives and Black and Latino communities?
Well, I think that the ability to retain employment and sustain yourself one of the ways that the child welfare systems evaluates a person's ability to be a parent. But as an employment lawyer, and I always say that I'm not a family law practitioner, I'm an employment law practitioner. What it really is just a real big hurdle. Even people who commit certain crimes, are not pigeonholed by the same circumstances as people on the state central register. So yeah, it really has an unfortunate effect, and we don't really hear about it much because people think abuse, everyone gets scared, right? Abuse, that's terrible. Obviously, no one wants children to be in harm's way. No one wants children to be less protected, right? But the SCR really has a lot of effects on people's ability, like I said, to maintain and retain work, and that is disproportionately impacting low-income communities of color in New York City.
Yeah, I would add that a lot of the families we work with at Rise, they say that if your family members have child welfare, you can also not be a resource for other family members when their children are in certain situations, when family resource should be the first, right? So it also hinders you as being a support. Being on that list basically categorizes you as an abuser, even though majority of cases are neglect, which means families are facing poverty.
And another point to add to what Jeanette was saying is that even if it's found that you don't do anything wrong on the state central register, they've already spoken to people in your neighborhood. They've already spoken to people at your children's school. They've already spoken to really your support system. So it really paints parents in a light that's less favorable or feels embarrassing. And another point that I missed adding is that Black and Latino folks in New York State are disproportionately present on the state central register in a way that our white brothers and sisters aren't. So we should, and the ways that we think about policing and stop and frisk and our relationship to the police in New York City, we should really think about the ways in which the child welfare really polices Black and Brown people and their ability to maintain families. So that's something I failed to add earlier.
What is the benefit of sealing and amending your records, and why is it important?
Well, the benefits are like astronomical. I mean, when you seal and amend your record, it means that and it, you know, for presumably some of you guys have read the article, but if you didn't, if you change an indicator report to unsubstantiated or unfounded, what it means is that you're it's found that you did nothing wrong. And even though currently the state central register still maintains those records, even though the records will reflect that nothing wrong happened, you know, it just enables folks to get work. I think that that's the really short answer, but what it really is, it takes away that stigma. You know, like we discussed, currently folks are on the state central register until the youngest child is 28 years old. If you take away that kind of barrier again to employment, it really opens up a lot of opportunities. There's a bunch of studies that show that a lot of the developing jobs in New York City are really working with vulnerable people, are working with children, are working with as home health aides for people in need. So when we think about the state central register and the benefits of clearing and sealing your record, you think about access to all of those jobs, right? Like in 2018, like I said, over 300,000 people had those checks. Imagine now 300,000 people having more access to that work, assuming that they had a case on the state central register.
Yeah, and for that one, I would add that, you know, I think, like you said, the stigma of just having that on your record and going for other employment and being mindful that this is going to pop up every time
Mhm.
you go apply for a job, right? Having other people like give you that eye, like you're a child abuser. I think that's a benefit
Mhm.
of having it sealed and amended. I personally have not had my cases sealed and amended, which is crazy. I've been working in this field for over 17 years. And what it feels like to parents is that we're on parole, right? We're still being watched, we're still
Mhm.
being surveillance, even though we've changed dramatically within our lives. So, right, I think that parole aspect of not being there will definitely benefit me. And I think it would just lift the whole weight off of my shoulders as that part of your life is completely over, because it doesn't feel completely over when it's still actively in the records somewhere in the world, right?
Yeah, and people think about getting a job as an opportunity to get ahead or move past a circumstance that they previously had. So being unable to do that is really harmful. And I think for a lot of my clients who are seeking work after coming out of a domestic violence situation, you know, access to money is one of the key ways in which people get out of violent situations. And so for like just that one example of a population who could really benefit, they were on the state central register because of a circumstance beyond their ability. Now every time that that gets brought up, it triggers trauma, and and also like kind of handcuffs you to the experiences of your past. So like the emotional relationship that's involved in still being on this record is can't go without mention.
Okay, with people who didn't read the article yet, how do you seal and amend your records?
Okay, I'm gonna try to give you the skinny. So you see, like, you get a notice that you're on the child welfare, that you're someone made a report to the state central register. By the time you get the letter, you probably already know that because ACS has been knocking on your door. Um, the investigation lasts about 60 days. Sometimes it lasts longer. Sometimes it lasts less. And then you get word that the report was either unfounded, so you did nothing wrong, and then the case is closed, or that the report has been founded or substantiated and that you have an indicator report. That's usually on the second line. So once you see that, you're like, now you need to do something, right? Because you only have 90 days from receiving that letter to actually do something about it. Within those 90 days, you write the state central register. The address is on the second page usually. Some of these forms might change with the legislative changes we might be discussing in the future, but for now it's on the second page. You write and say, listen, I'm challenging this report. I would like to get it amended to unfounded and sealed. The first step that they do after you send that letter is called an administrative review. The great majority of the cases don't survive an administrative review. And what that is, administrative review, is basically OCFS, the state, the Office of Children and Family Services. What they do is that they're the office that houses the state central register, and they see like, hey, like, can we amend and seal this report? If they don't, then they refer it to a hearing. At a hearing, you get assigned a judge, an administrative law judge, who will be sitting on your case, and then you're going to be going up against the Administration for Children's Services in New York City, and that's ACS. And what ACS does is that they kind of stand up for their investigation, right? So it's ACS folks who conduct the investigations at the order of the state, right? And when you go before a judge, you go up before an administrative state judge. And against the city who conducted the investigation. So if you succeed, then the complaint is amended and sealed. If you don't succeed, the complaint gets retained and then you're still on the state central register. That is a very, very short version of a very long process. If you guys have any questions, you could put it in the Facebook Live, and Jeanette will let me know. That's the process.
Okay, once you do all that, how long does a process typically take?
So it depends. Every case is really different, you know. I guess one short answer would be it usually takes longer than it takes to get a job. So if you're waiting on a job to run this test to run this background check to see whether you're eligible for employment there, then a lot of people lose the opportunity for that job or that volunteering position because they usually move on to the person they can hire more immediately. So that's like the big picture issue with the timeliness of it. But it could take, like, let's say your case, you submit, you write OCFS a letter, and they say, you know what, this case really had no merit, and they close your case. It can happen pretty quickly. It can happen within a couple of months or a couple of weeks, really, even. But I've had cases that take a really long time because a lot of people don't know that a lot of people, it's a really simple letter, kind of, it's a form letter. That folks get, and some people don't know that they have to do something with it, or some people don't receive it at all because they're in a time of crisis when these things get sent out, right? So the process can take anywhere from a couple of months to a couple of years, and it really depends on, you know, when people find out, what people do when they find out, when they contact the state to try to get it fixed, if that actually happened. You know, I heard an example one time where, you know, there was a junior and a senior, and then the child ended up on the state central registered based on something that the parent did with regard to another child. So that person was able to fix it really quickly because it was clearly an error. But in circumstances where, let's say, the person doesn't know and finds out years later, it can take a while. So it really just depends.
Yes, I'm 17 years later still waiting, so it's a process.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, can you tell us a little bit, what Karina, about when you go to a hearing that you're denied, like what would be your recommendations of what parents should be bringing to the hearing that can help them get their cases sealed or amended?
So if you can get an advocate, I really recommend it. I had a case where the person brought their friend as an advocate, and the friend ended up doing something terribly wrong. So just make sure that your advocate is actually there to advocate for you in a way that's meaningful toward your case. You know, a lot of, as we mentioned in the article, a lot of judges look at, there's two parts that a judge will look at, right? what the facts are in the complaint, and whether or not the judge believes that the person committed maltreatment or abuse. Or the second prong is, whether or not it's reasonably related to a person's ability to work with children or other vulnerable populations. That second prong is important because even though the judge, let's say that they believe that neglect or abuse did happen, they might also find that it's not relevant to you working with children, and that way it still gets sealed. So there's a number of, ways that the judge can decide that people might find favorable. In any case, every case is different. So I'm going to give you my overall thoughts. And my overall thoughts is to include information to show the judge that either the facts are true or not true, right? Whether those are letters from people that can attest to the person's ability to take care of children or take care of their own children. Any letters of support from your community, from the child care, from school, from doctors, from people who see you interacting with your children regularly. And things that you did to overcome the circumstances of the allegation. So like some people go to therapy because it's a big burden to carry emotionally, and it shows the judge, look, I try to move past that. Anything to show the judge just that, the administrative judge, just that you are doing what you can to overcome the circumstances of that complaint, even if the complaint was baloney. So it just shows that the parent overcame. And I understand that some of the parents that I work with feel like, if I bring these things to court, if I do these tasks, if I engage in this therapy, if I go to these working groups, then I'm admitting I did something wrong. I understand that feeling a lot, but a lot of parents that I work with also want to benefit from it emotionally. So how to prepare for hearings? The short answer is how to just bring things to show the judge that you've overcome the situations that are the subject of that complaint. More specifically, letters. If you're engaging in therapy, a letter from your therapist. If you're going to church and there's a church group that you're benefiting from, include that. If you're working with friends that are helping you through it, include that. Just showing that you're doing better in some ways.
If you didn't get a letter about your case, how could you find out if your name is on it?
So you have, as a subject of a report, you have the right to all of your records, even if you're not guilty or if there's not a founded report with regard to you. So what you do is you contact the Office of Children and Family Services, OCFS. And the way that you do that is by their address on the second page, or you could just the flyers that I provided to Rise, that Rise has, like the Know Your Rights information has the address on it, or you can Google NYS, New York State OCFS, Office of Children and Family Services, and contact them for your records. There you will have a summary of all of the things, or you may not have anything on it, or you might have a summary of all the things that all the reports that were made against you. And there you will see whether or not they were substantiated, or whether, in other words, whether you have an indicated case or whether you don't have an indicated case, what things people reported about you. And if, let's say, there's nothing there, you don't have to do anything. Now you just know, right? But then let's say that you do know, right? A lot of people find out that they had a case because they have another case. And if you didn't find out about the former case, what you would do is you can, right, contact OCFS and ask, like, hey, I never received this. I didn't know that I was a subject of that report. You can take a look at the address maybe to see if your address is the same. Like I said, a lot of times these reports are made in a time of crisis. So, a lot of my clients who live in shelters don't receive these reports because, they have a hard time getting mail in the shelter system, or they transferred and the old shelter didn't bring it to didn't forward it to the new shelter, so on and so forth. There's a number of explanations that you can provide to OCFS so that they can evaluate whether or not to reopen your case. But that would be the remedy. Let's say if you did have an open case, but you didn't have an opportunity to fight it because of you didn't know about it. You can offer an explanation and they'll evaluate whether or not they want to open it.
Is the pandemic preventing parents from getting their names off the SCR? And how has the process during the process changed?
A lot has changed. I think that all lawyers can attest to all the things that have changed since the pandemic. Things are a little bit slower from my perspective, particularly because not everyone has the same access to technology. And even if you do have access to technology, how is the technology? Is the technology working well and stuff like that? So things have definitely been a little bit slower. OCFS is still sending out letters pretty readily. It's just that once you have a question, it takes a little longer to answer. This is just my personal experience. I can't speak on behalf of everyone, but all court proceedings, whether they're on the administrative level or all the way to the top, are taking just a little bit longer just because everyone is getting used to this. But I haven't seen the number of reports slow down. Right. I've read a number of articles that mentioned the increase in domestic violence issues, right? And that certainly has a relationship to the state central register and the reports that are made to it. So, the calls are still coming in to the SCR based on my observations, right? I don't have the numeric information related to that, but based on my observations, the calls are still coming in. It's just the processing that takes a little longer.
Governor Cuomo signed a bill to change the SCR. What will change for parents when the bill goes in effect in 2022?
There's like 4 major changes. The first is the standard, right? So it's really easy to get on the state central register right now. The evidence standard is so low, they don't even teach us what it is in law school because it like falls even below that. And the evidence standard right now is some evidence, some credible evidence, right? So any evidence at all can get you on the state central register, even if, for example, is your abuser spoke to the caseworker, and the caseworker now referred this information to OCFS, where they found that there's some evidence, right? The some evidence is the evidence of a person that they shouldn't have trusted. Now, in 2022, in January, what's going to change is that the evidence is going to go up to a preponderance of the evidence. Now they have to evaluate, is it more likely than not? If you think about it in terms of percentages, 51%, right? More likely than not that this happened, and that little bit of evidence won't get you on the state central register. The second thing that will change is a lot of folks who have state central register matters related to the state central register also have a family court matter. And if, let's say, a family court judge found that you didn't neglect or abuse your child, then you still currently have to fight it with the state central register at an administrative hearing. Whereas in 2022, the family court judge's decision that you didn't, for example, abuse or neglect your child would also apply before an administrative judge to get you off of the state central register. The third thing is that cases, as we stated, the cases that are currently on the state central register remain there until the youngest child is 28 years old. Now, for cases of neglect, not abuse, but just neglect, that is going to reduce to 8 years, which is a big deal. And the fourth, hold on, let me think. I mentioned 3. Let me look at my notes. So there's the 8 years, there's the family court, and there's the standard change, and I'm missing one. Hold on, I have it in my notes. Okay, that, remember I mentioned that if you change, this is the last one. If you challenge your report within 90 days, then you automatically get to include evidence of the things that you've done to overcome the circumstances of that report. But you can only do that if you appeal that report within 90 days, which is why advocates throughout the city always fight for you to challenge that report within 90 days. However, that in 2022 will change to allow all cases, even if you challenge it after the 90 days. There's two circumstances that people find out that they're on the state central register for the most part. The first is finding out because you had an employment check, and when you find out when you had an employment check, that is often more than 90 days after. So you can only challenge the facts of the case, and you cannot include new evidence. In those cases, that's usually called a 424 hearing. Most people hope for a 422 hearing where you could include evidence of what you've done to change or overcome those circumstances, and you can challenge the report themselves. So again, just by way of overview, because I know we get a few people in the live, 422 hearings, you could include evidence to challenge the facts of the case, and evidence to show how you've overcome the circumstances of those of that case, to show that, like, this is not reasonably related to my ability to work with children or vulnerable people. It's 422. 424, you could only you only find out about it, or you most of the time find out about it after an employment check. And oftentimes in a 424 hearing, you cannot include evidence of whether or not it's reasonably related, of how you've overcome, and whether or not it's reasonably related to you working with children. So the 424 hearing is really restrictive. And in 2022, that's going to change. And all hearings before an administrative law judge related to the state central register allow evidence of how you've overcome the circumstances of the complaint. So that's great, because I can really show the judge to say, like, hey, like, this isn't the facts of this complaint are so unique that it doesn't bear to the character of this person that I'm assisting. So those are the four major changes.
Yes, that was a lot of information. I hope you guys
I
were
know.
taking notes while Karina was talking. And as she said, you can always go to the Rise Magazine website and get all the flyers that MLS has created to give you more information specifically about the SCR. I would just hope that in 2022 they automatically seal all cases that are past 8 years, right, and not make us parents go through all this process when it should just be like cut off. But that's just Jeanette wishful thinking over here.
Yeah, I can't speculate as to what they're gonna do. Like, I think that some advocates I've seen are already kind of being like, if it's gonna be the law in a year, why don't you just do it now? Allow me to, close this now. But it's not the law yet. And even like that 8-year application, we have to see how the judges use it, because it hasn't been enforced yet. So in a perfect world, perfect things will happen. But, we live here fighting. We're just fighting.
Yes, I'm gonna open it up to some questions we have on the live comments. So the first one is my unfounded SCR actually sealed? I am currently unemployed, but a couple prospective employers were able to get in and see that there was an investigation.
Yeah, if it's unfounded, they shouldn't, like, if it's unfounded, then it's sealed. And when it's sealed, she should write out CFS to see. I mean, this is not by none of anything that I've said constitutes legal advice, but what I would do in that situation is see what's on my record and evaluate if there's a founded case. Unfounded reports are generally sealed. Now, keep in mind that person might know, like, the reports come up again because I say sealed and not expunged on purpose. A case is expunged only when no one can see it. A case is sealed only when a handful of people can see it. So SCR cases are sealed to employers. And if an employer is saying you have an indicator report, there might be something in that person's SCR record that they don't know about. So I would if I was that person, I would see if there's something else on my record, because unfounded cases are generally sealed. And only the person, only the subject of a report has access to their records. So, it's not like, presumably, right? A lot of things happen in the world. Oftentimes, most times, what should happen is that a person who is the subject of a report is the only person seeing that information, and an unfounded report will be sealed, and people who are not ACS, not the police, and not people, in family court, for example, uh, if it's relevant, usually are the only people to bring it up. But an employer, I haven't never seen it. Maybe there was a mistake that they should rectify. I'm not sure.
Nice, thank you. The next question is there any organization, attorney, or group that can assist to get the SCR expunged?
Yeah, me. You can contact us. Hold on, let me look up we have a central number. It's a 917 number. 9176. Hold on, 665. I don't want to mess it up on live, but just give me one moment. Okay, 917-661-4500. They can contact us, and we have advocates in the Bronx. We have advocates in Manhattan. We have advocates throughout the city. If you're in Manhattan, I'll probably get the call. But yeah, we can assist. There's also a number of resources like that people have. The community is small but mighty. Any other questions?
Yes. I am going for a position that asks me, have you ever been in an investigation conducted by an agency, government organization, or other? How do I answer whether an unfounded CSR case on my record?
Okay. So as an employment law, no one's going to tell you to lie ever on an employment application, because a lie would be sufficient reason not to give you a job. So never lie if you want the job. Now, I think that question is too broad. I'm actually kind of fighting some employers right now to say, like, it's not relevant, don't ask the question, because you're asking the question too broadly. So I don't know. I'm not that person, and I'm not I don't know what I would do in that circumstance, but I just know you can't lie in an employment application, and they kind of have a right to ask. Now, if the case is unfounded and they want to provide that explanation, you can say, while I was the subject of a report, I was found not guilty or something like that. Because people don't know what the SCR is, and if you write unfounded, they might be confused. So I don't know what I would do in that circumstance. I'm working with other advocates to make it so that question doesn't appear. It's certainly not so broadly, right? The subject of an investigation, literally anybody can be investigated at any time for any reason. It's the question is whether or not you're unfounded. And even the question later becomes like, you know, should that stop you from getting a job? One of the reasons for why the SCR is so constricting is that even in the context of people who commit crimes, I mean, I think everyone should be allowed to get a job, right? But even in the context of people who commit crimes, there's a certain set of laws that employers have to follow before even asking whether or not you were convicted of a crime. That doesn't exist for the state central register. And that's really unfortunate, because people somebody can call ACS out of spite, or, the state central register hotline. In New York City, we call it ACS, but someone can call the ACS SCR out of spite, and, you could really pay the price for it. So I don't know what the answer to that question personally is, but the truth is that you can't lie on an employment application. I wouldn't advise you to lie. Maybe if you really want the job, you can say, like, hey, the case was unfounded, I did nothing wrong.
Great. That is actually all of our questions online. Is there anything you want to just generally share with our audience today, Washkarina?
Yeah, if you're a parent who's been affected by the system, know that there's a community to help you. I don't promise having all the answers, and I don't purport to, right? I don't know a lot of stuff, and I don't even know if I can help you, but I can try to make things better. So, there are resources that are out there. There are flyers with a lot of the stuff that we discussed, that have been circulated. Please take a look at those. I 917-661-4500 at LSNYC. You can contact us at Legal Services, and we can see whether or not we can help you. And yeah, don't lose hope. If you're in the subject of an investigation right now, good luck. And like I said, just know that there's a community of advocates fighting for you.
Yes, and I would add in that if you're facing an investigation in the early stages now, there are also early legal representation that you can reach out to the legal agencies for. You want to give us a little bit about that, Wash Karina?
Well, Mascarina doesn't do that. I usually take on after there has been an indicated report, but there are other advocacy, other ways and other advocates that, start the process early on. Like I said, the indicator report is just at the other half of the process. But when the call comes in and there's a knock on your door by ACS in New York City, there are advocates that can do that for you. I know that I do not do that, but I know that others do. I'm sure that there's a list of resources out there for folks. You do have rights with regard to who you're allowed to let in your house. Every case is different, so I can't say it one way or another right now, but just you have a lot more rights than you think, and don't feel so constricted.
Yeah, and we'll add that information to the Facebook Live. Give some shout outs to the Bronx Defenders, Brooklyn
Yeah, I
Defenders.
was gonna. Yeah, the
Yeah, give
defender
them a
services
shout out.
do, but I don't know. Every office is different, so I didn't want to make a general statement. But yeah, if you know of any resources,
Yeah. And from Rise, if any parent in New York City needs some support with their active case, their closed case, and they just want to be in an environment in a space with other parents, we also have a Rise community support group that we run every Thursdays from 6 to 7 p.m. consecutively, right? We don't miss a Thursday. And we're there just to support parents to understand any situations, concerns, help them navigate their cases, and just be a support as a parent to another parent. So yes, thank you guys so much for being with us today. Thank you, Wash Karina. You've been great. It's been a pleasure doing this with you.
thank
Kenya,
you.
thank you for
Thank you.
leading us and facilitating our questions today. We appreciate it. And again, if anybody has any questions to follow up, please feel free to reach out to us and we will try our best to respond after the holidays, right? And happy holidays to everyone. Hope you have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank
Yeah,
you guys.
happy holidays, everybody.
Happy
Bye.
holiday.